Hi, it's the Gracious Guest Show. It's time once again for it. I mean, it seems like it was only yesterday that I did this last. I was sitting at the microphone here, jumping just with reckless abandon into a new episode of the Gracious Guest Show. However, it's been about a week and a half since the last show, so that's kind of unacceptable. So I just kind of decided to wing it today, so we're going to see where we get. So I'm your host, Mike Creevy. Host of the Gracious Guest Show, and if this is your first time checking the show out, there's kind of a lot of things going on with this particular podcast, and things that I'm interested in, things that I kind of reflect on and mull over and ruminate about when I'm driving to work or home from work, or when I'm getting ready in the morning, or just kind of like making copies or grading papers and tests and stuff as a high school teacher, that sort of surprise me sometimes, quite frankly. And I think it's always kind of been there, but it's something that is kind of growing and developing in just, kind of my life, my whole life. And namely, that is the presence of wonder, the marvelous all around us all the time. The experience of something kind of other, something outside what I can see and immediately perceive and sense. That feeling you get when you stand on a mountaintop and just look out and just, you're not thinking about what you have to do at work the next day or what you're worried about. You just you find yourself drawn up into something completely above and beyond what you can grasp. You have that first kiss, or the birth of your child, or you see a movie that just really affects you in a profound way that you really just have trouble describing, and you really here's the key: you want to share that with somebody. You immediately want to go out and kind of, hey, check this out. Like, you want to take somebody else by the hand and say, look, check this out. That's what I'm talking about. That's what this show is about, and that's what I try to explore. Whether it's life experiences that I've had where I just kind of share with you, or book reviews or movie reviews. I do those not just because people do movie reviews and I want to do them too. I'm really trying to find those connection points in certain books and movies and things like that that really help us to, go outside of these day-to-day kind of humdrum, things that kind of get us, wrapped around the axle, where I kind of lose sight of the big picture, or I get so busy at work, or even, depressed maybe, looking out at all the stuff going on in the world that's just so bad so often. So it's not escapism, like an irresponsible kind of escapism where I ignore like those problems and stuff in the world. No, I think that through more regularly reflecting, more regularly trying to be receptive, because that's the thing, is you can't make these moments happen. To be receptive to being shown the true big picture, the glory, the beauty all around us that we so oftentimes don't dare to hope for anymore. So that's what the Gracious Guest Show is kind of about, if I had to summarize it. And today, it's funny, I just sort of, like I said a few minutes ago, just decided to kind of jump right in and wing this one today, because at the time of this recording, it is December 5th. So we're 10 days away from the release of Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And if you've followed the show before, or if you know me, you know that I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan. I'm not some incredibly trivia heavy kind of guy who could give you all the different names of every character and planet in the entire expanded universe and all those kinds of things. But I can hold my own pretty well. And I think I'm just kind of like your above average Star Wars fan in general, so not like a really hyper, super expert or something, but it's something. I've always enjoyed Star Wars. There's a previous podcast if you want to go back and check the archives. iTunes has a cap of how many previous shows they have out there, but if you go to thegraciousguest.podbean.com, or if you go to my website, thegraciousguest.org, and then just click on the podcast link, it'll take you directly there. So you can subscribe to the show if you haven't already through iTunes. That works for a lot of people, other podcasting services. But like I said, they don't always have the whole archive available. But if you go to the website where I actually host the show from, the Podbean account that you can get through my website, you can go back and check it out. And so I've done a few shows before that dealt with Star Wars, and one of them was early on, like an episode about just why I love Star Wars, and I kind of went through a couple of the main reasons. So I'm not going to go through all that again today. But today, all I wanted to go over for just a few minutes is a seemingly odd connection. That's why this episode is called Advent and Star Wars. So what's the... or maybe Star Wars and Advent. I don't know yet what I'm going to call it. So by the time you hear this, you'll know which one I picked. But why is it called that? Why am I looking at Advent and Star Wars? What do they have in common? Well, what just occurred to me a few minutes ago was how awful I am at waiting. I mean, so, and it kind of depends on what it is, but like, you know, I occasionally as a kid, like I might have been that kid who snuck under the Christmas tree. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this, and might have peeked at some of my presents. You know, and I mean, a lot of kids do that, right? Like, sometimes we don't want to wait. We're not, and especially now, I think just kind of culturally, I think it's just gotten worse. You know, we're really, you know, I want it now, you know, and that kind of thing. But, so for me, at least, you know, not speaking for anybody else, I've just been noticing for, like, a long time that, like, I can't stop looking up spoilers. And thank God, up to this point, I mean, so when The Force Awakens came out, spoiler alert, turn away now if you have not seen episode 7. Probably, why would you be listening to this if you hadn't? But at any rate, I knew that Kylo Ren killed Han Solo, okay, before I saw the movie. That sucks. I mean, you can guess that something like that might happen. You can kind of predict it. But I knew that Kylo Ren was Ben Solo, and I knew that he killed Han. Like, I saw a screenshot or something, or some Reddit thing, you know, about it, like, 2 days before I went to see it. And to make matters worse, I saw a quick screenshot that someone took in a movie theater of Luke on the cliff on Ahch-To at the end. And I was like, okay, like, did it ruin my experience of The Force Awakens? No, I loved going to see it. And it was like truly almost like a magical experience, because as much as I love, you know, and I really do enjoy the prequels, I you know, have my problems with them like a lot of people do, but I you know, whatever. It was different. I mean, like, going to those, it was cool because it was like, hey, I'm seeing new Star Wars movies in a theater. But you always knew, though, like, where it had to end up, you know, with the prequels. So even though they did a lot of things and explored some stuff that was kind of maybe, like, shocking here and there, you know, you knew what had to happen. You knew Darth Vader, like, Anakin had to fall to the dark side and become Darth Vader, and that's that. So it was kind of nostalgic as it got later in, like, episode 2 and 3 when you started seeing things like certain ship sound effects or, like, styles, you know, of things that were reminiscent of the original movies, like, hey, this is, you know, as the timeline's going, you know, we're getting close to that original timeline you remember from the movies when you were a kid. So that was cool. But with, you know, with these new ones, it's like, especially with the decision to get rid of the expanded universe as canon and everything, you know, I mean, they could do so much. They can explore whole new storylines and everything, and there's a lot more to potentially be spoiled. And I was like, you idiot. Like, I got so excited about it that I just ruined it for myself in a way, going into episode 7 2 years ago. So I remember, like, this is so dumb, but, you know, so it's 2 years ago now, but I remember after seeing it, you know, and getting into 2016 at the beginning then of just in the few months after The Force Awakens came out, I was like, I made myself a promise. I was like, oh, I'm not going to look up any spoilers when episode 8 comes out. And I didn't really look up much about Rogue One because it's kind of different as a spin-off movie and everything, so that wasn't as much of an issue. But this has been a hard year for me. This is like 2017 has been like, especially since, you know, like, so they released the title back in like February, and it's like, oh, Last Jedi, what's that mean? You know, God forbid I wait till December to watch this movie. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, I've had to, like, make myself on several occasions, maybe it's just a day or a week at a time, where I really am like, okay, this day or this week, I am not going to look up, you know, I'm not going to Google Star Wars The Last Jedi. But if you'll, you know, look at my Google search history, it's by far the most Googled thing. So that's just kind of like, I'm thinking about it lately, and I'm like, okay, we got 10 days left. I don't actually, there's all sorts of theories, but I don't actually know anything incredibly significant about this movie. And there's all sorts of teasers, like they're trying to drive us nuts on purpose, and it's working on me to sort of get us to really think about what our expectations are for this. And how does any of this have anything to do with Advent? Well, here's what just hit me, was in a way it's kind of like the anticipation that the people had for the Messiah. And if you know anything about the sort of history of the Jewish faith and kind of, so they, real quick crash course, they get freed from slavery in Egypt by God, and Moses leads them through the desert, and then God gives Moses the Ten Commandments, this law for his new people, because they've been slaves for so long and they don't really know how to be a free country or anything yet, because everyone they've ever known has been a slave. It's this terrible injustice that has happened to them. So the first thing that God gives them is a law, like something to bind them, a way to handle disputes, and a lot of times it seems pretty harsh, but we oftentimes don't appreciate how chaotic their situation was and how urgent it was for them to be able to settle some of these things, sometimes right away, and in kind of a very, very strong, heavy-handed kind of way even sometimes. So he gives them the Ten Commandments. They go and they inhabit the promised land and everything, and they end up getting a kingdom established, and King David especially, and Solomon reign over that. And then they have a long history of a lot of bad kings that ultimately they lose their grip and they get conquered. And the worst one of all is they lose everything. The Babylonians conquer them around 586 or 587 BC. And then so you have like this almost 600-year period where all these different things are happening, and there's a long tradition of all these prophets and then these different people in the Jewish faith longing for what they've lost, and also trusting that God had promised to restore them and to be with them, to never depart from them, to fulfill his promises, to give them an everlasting kingdom and all these kinds of things. And they're like, well, where is this? Okay, someday God's going to send this Messiah, this king, this anointed one to reign over us again and to bring us back and reestablish us in our homeland once more. So with all this turmoil around them, this generation after generation of constant anticipation, constant expectation, constant, temptation to just imagine and build up in their own minds what this guy, this Messiah, was going to have to be like, and what he's going to have to do, and he's going to be like, we have all these enemy nations that are trying to oppress us, so he's going to have to be a great military leader and fight them back. He just has to be, and we have all this. All these political problems, all these factions, so he has to be this great, like political ruler who's gonna establish this political kingdom, and he has to be from this town, he has to look like this, he has to talk like this. So for hundreds of years, they're building this anticipation and building up in their own minds, and they're oftentimes so fixated on making it what they think it has to be, that a lot of them miss it when it comes. We see this story in the Gospels that, the real genius of God is when it's time for the Messiah to be born. What palace is he born in? What influential family does he come to? He doesn't. He's born in a stable. Nobody expected that. He's born to a young couple, poor people, who have a lot of their integrity being called into question because God has seen fit to conceive his son with Mary's cooperation in the womb of this 14 or 15-year-old girl, and all sorts of people calling into question her honor and her integrity and all that kind of stuff. So a potentially scandalous looking domestic situation. They have to go not into Nazareth where they eventually live as a family, but they have to go all the way to Bethlehem because Joseph is a descendant of David. But the house of David is kind of gone to a lot of people. It doesn't have the influence it used to have. And meanwhile, Herod and, all these people are looking for this man of power, this, man who's going to anoint himself or appoint himself the king over the people and raise up a military revolution and all this. Yeah, and they totally miss him, right? Because he's born into just absolute abject poverty in a food trough. Like, they lay him in a manger, right? It's not this quaint little Christmas picture. It's a filthy, disease-infested, like, animal trough. And he's born and they lay him in this thing with hay, It's like not... And he's visited by shepherds. Shepherds are by far the most, like, rejected and distrusted group in Israelite society at Jesus' time. They're just seen as a bunch of thieves. Their testimony is not admissible in court at the time, and who comes to visit him in throngs? The shepherds. That's who the angel goes and says, hey guys, there's a new king. The Messiah's over here. So the neighbors in Bethlehem are like, who are these shepherds going? Like, what is going on here? So yeah, it's what's my point here? Well, I think I can take a lesson from my Advent, and maybe it can go both ways. In the spirit of Advent, that we don't just rush to Christmas and rip the presents open. We shouldn't just build up in our own minds everything we think Jesus should be, but rather be open to having him, maybe say something, maybe have him speak on his own behalf, maybe listen to what he has to say for a change instead of saying, okay, Lord, here's all the things I think you should do to fix the world. Maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe there's a surprise. Maybe there's a great big spoiler that he wants me to experience at the right moment, and I'm trying to force it. I'm trying to get something before it's time, and if I get it, it's going to ruin things. It's going to taint my experience. It's going to detract from this gift, that God wants to give me. This gift, something that I can grow in or an experience in my life that will be just perfect if I just trust and kind of let it happen in its own time, So we're not very good at that, but I think there's a lesson here, maybe for me, maybe for you too, about, of all things, Advent through my Star Wars frenzy. So here's what I'm going to try to do. And I don't know, I'll let you know how this goes, because I'm going to do a review on The Last Jedi after I see it. But like I said, it's December 5th at the time of this recording. I am going to try, starting right now, as soon as I, post this, I am going to try to, and I'm committing, I ask my listeners to keep me accountable on this. Email me, send me a message at thegraciousguest at gmail.com, or over, just over on the website, or look me up on Twitter, on Facebook. Ask me how I'm doing. Please do this. I could use your help. Send me a reminder like, hey, don't forget, don't look up any spoilers. So I'm going to try to absolutely do no more searching out on Google or any other, through any other means, through Twitter or anything else, to not go seeking any more information, whatever it is, tidbits, trailers, spoilers, any of that stuff about Star Wars Last Jedi until I go and see it on Saturday the 16th. So please also don't give me any spoilers on the 15th or 16th. I'm going to try to go completely blackout that day as best I can. We got a lot on the plate for that day, so I'll be pretty busy anyway on the 15th. But Saturday, December 16th, just about 3 p.m., that's when I will be kicking back in the theater to see what there is to see in The Last Jedi, and allowing it to just unfold, right? And to bring me into all the stuff it wants to sort of have me experience at the right time. So, Advent, Star Wars, pretty awesome, both of them. Advent's more important, of course, by far. But I also have an Advent show if you want to go back and check out early on, again, in the Gracious Guest show. The first couple episodes, I want to say episode 3 or 4. If you want to go back and check that out, too. Kind of an episode on why I love Advent, why Advent, what it is, if you're not really familiar with it. And, even if you're not of a religious background or not a Catholic background in particular, there's a lot of cool stuff about just the way Advent is designed to kind of help you reflect and process and kind of unplug a little bit, turn down the volume of the world and that sort of thing. So I recommend you go back and check that out. But at any rate, I am Mike Creevy. This is the Gracious Guest Show. And if you are not yet subscribed to the show, feel free to go ahead and do that. Tell your friends about the show. Give me your feedback. Let me know if there's any shows, the topics you'd like to hear about in the future. Books, movies, things that help us to wonder and to call our minds and our hearts out into the great wonder and beauty that lies beyond what we can kind of immediately perceive. So, I'm Mike Creevy. Until next time, don't forget to wonder. Take care.